talk about is sustaining exploration investment in West Africa. I mean, how do you influence governance and policy in the era of global risk? Now, what I'm going to say is that exploration is the key to mining. In fact, is the vein, is the arteries through which the blood of mining passes. You know, so if you don't have exploration pipeline, your mining is going to end. So as a country, there should be constant investment in exploration. That is key. That is one point. Second point, there are some factors that drive exploration. There are some factors, and these factors are positive and expansive. So I'm going to say that. And then two, I'm going to say that there are also some negative factors that draw us back. They are negative and restrictive. They draw us back. So they don't make our exploration go on. Now, to sustain our mining, we need to have an exploration pipeline. We need to have a pipeline of exploration that you can always rely on. Otherwise, as a country or as a region, we are in trouble. Now, I am also saying that in recent past, in the last decade or more, there have been serious risk to exploration, global risks to exploration. And I'll tell you some of the risks that we have identified or that has been identified. I will use a study by Ernst & Young. Now, I think the key risk to mining, interestingly, what do you think is the biggest risk to mining from a global point? It's something they call license to operate and resource nationalism. I will explain that later on. I'm sure you have heard this before, but at least you would have an idea. So when you go, and you know sometimes engineers, you go to work and then all you want to do is just drill, do your cutback, organize your machines, do all those things. You don't look at those risk factors. But these are the things that will also help you do your work. So these are the areas. And then I will indicate what we need to do to minimize some of these risks. I will look at the trends, exploration trends in the world in a very brief way in West Africa, Africa, and in Ghana. You know, the global mining and exploration industry remain cautious with concern over the scale of global economic growth. You know, people will spend money when they know that globally there is growth that would demand or that would need the product that we work on. For instance, if you look at China in the last 10 years or 20 years have consumed the amount of cement that was consumed by the US in 100 years. So China used less than 20 years to consume cement that has been consumed by the US in 100 years. So if you are in the cement industry, if you are in the basalt or clinker or limestone industry, you know that China will be there for you to produce for. So you would invest more in exploration because you anticipate that there will be people to buy. You get what I mean? Now, but globally, people have been very cautious. And what drives this caution? What drives this caution is that China, even though in the last 10 years has grown very well, they have some concerns with the U.S. relationship. I'm sure some of you know that there's trade war going on with the U.S. So it's creating a certain level of uncertainty among those who are in the exploration business. However, that notwithstanding, we see some upward trend in exploration investment. So the good news is that in spite of what could have scared us, because China's growth is becoming a little bit timid, U.S. growth is not as sharp as one wants, and there's also a fight between these two giants. In spite of that, there's some interest in exploration. And of course, we see that for the third consecutive years, we see exploration investment increasing. Budget for exploration has increased, which means that you have jobs in the future. And that even though the trend of increase is not go, it's falling. It's increasing, but not as large as one would have expected that to be. And of course, the largest area, the areas with largest exploration investment, interestingly, it's not Africa, it's not Ghana, it's in the US. So that's quite clear. Now, if you look at the exploration trend, if you scale it down to Africa, the reflection is the same. There's an increase in exploration, largely in the oil sector. I would concentrate more on mining, on the solid minerals. But I think for your sake, it's interesting for you to know that in the last few years, there's been a lot of investment in the exploration in the hydrocarbon areas. We see that that has led to an increase by about 68% in oil finds. The figures are there, about 75 billion to about 126 billion in the last few years. We've also seen that there's been more investment in gas exploration for gas as well. So we think that there is a possibility for increased exploration in that area. Now, we also learned that similar trend occurs in the mining, the solid mineral area. You have more investment in that area, which has led to, in Guinea, the Sumandu project, which is one of the largest untapped deposit of high-grade iron ore. That's Africa. Sumandu iron ore project is one of the biggest. The quality is very, very high. In Ghana, you know that recently we have become number one in Africa. But I am very cautious when I speak about Ghana being number one in gold production. I say this with some caution because it is not so much because we produce so much gold, but it is so much because South Africa came down. You see, your strength is at the strength of somebody's weakness. But of course, you can always brag with that. So that's what we know. And then also, if you look at DR Congo, it's got the largest reserve of cobalt. I mean, that country is a sleeping giant. It is so sad that in Africa, you have countries that are so endowed, so much resources, and are very, very poor. There's no mineral in the world, perhaps, that you cannot find in significant quantities in DR Congo. Yet, you know the situation. Of course, even in Madagascar, you see that they have some of the very large deposit of nickel in that area. So in Africa, the trend looks positive. If you scale down to West Africa, I think the effect is almost the same. The good thing is that in West Africa, we also have some of the top mining companies operating here. We have the Newmont, we have the Goldfields, we have the Anglo Gold Ashantis, and all that. Now, Newmont is Newmont Gold Corp, isn't it? So they are no more Newmont Corporation. They are Newmont Gold Corp. I think that's what they are called now. So once you have all these big players operating in your backyard, it gives a positive feeling. And then, of course, when you come back to Ghana, we see that in Ghana, we have various, in fact, the various minerals have been discovered. You know that more than I do. In fact, I'm sure you've been told about the Airborne Geophysical Survey that was conducted a few years ago that actually came out with a discovery of minerals that we didn't think we had. Tantalum, platinum, a PGM family of minerals. So we have that. But interestingly, we have been known to be gold country. Even though we have all these minerals, we have limestone, we have kaolin, we have all those things, Ghana has become synonymous with gold. And for good reason. If 97% by value of our mineral output is from gold, then obviously everybody will call you a gold man. So Ghana has a bright future. We have all the minerals. I think I think we need to do further mapping and further exploration of these minerals. In fact, even though the country has been covered geophysically, I don't think we've done the actual mapping. I remember before I left the commission, we had an agreement. The commission had an agreement with the Department of Earth Science for people to help do the mapping, especially for PhD and master students for their thesis. I don't know how that is gone, but at least there was some arrangement to that effect. We need to map and know exactly what we have. Now, what factors guide exploration? What are the key factors? First of all, your geology is very important, because you cannot look for mineral where you don't have the pointers, where you don't have the geology. And I think Ghana, the indications are quite clear. So the history of Ghana, the formation, the rock formation and everything seem to suggest that we are very endowed. So that's a positive thing for us. Also, over the years, we have trained quite a number of people in the minerals industry. In fact, not in the industry generally, but more in the extractive side. You know, we have geologists and mining engineers and metallurgists and all that, and not in the other side of downstream. So, but of course, if you compare Ghana with other countries, we have good quality human resources. When the investors come, one of the things they say about us is that, look, the staff in Ghana are quite good, and some of them are also taken out. When you go to Australia, quite a number of Ghanaians are heading mines or working in key position. So it means that you find quite a number of us in key areas. When you look at you also have to look at the politics. You know, investors, not only mining investors, every investor is very sensitive, because people who want to invest are cowards. They are always afraid of what happens to them. If I put my money there, won't there be a conflict somewhere where I can't get my money back? So politics is also a driving factor. So you have to find out whether our politics is good or our politics is bad. So politics is very important. Also, global market, I have indicated, is also an attractive or destructive point. When people see the global trend to be demanding of more minerals, it will drive investment in exploration. So, of course, we also have to look at the effect of communities. When communities do not allow exploration to take place, and it is known that here, when you go here, the community won't allow you to do exploration, it affects the exploration potential of the country. Now, let us look at the negative influencing factors. And some of them may come from the positives as well. You know, I have indicated that the monomineral exploitation, the old lady thesis. I call this the old lady thesis because, maybe it's the old man's thesis. Because everybody thinks that Ghana has been over-explored. So when they are coming, as for Ghana, we have the map, we know the information. It's been explored many times. So somehow it affects their interest. So they are going to Ivory Coast. They are going to Mali. As for Mali, or Ivory Coast in particular, I think the geology is similar to the ones in Ghana, but it's not been explored, and so they'll go there. And so that thing is there, what I call the old ladies theory. We are old, people have exploited us, we've seen it all. But I don't buy that. I buy that only for gold. And even that, still people discover pockets of additional gold. Otherwise, mining companies would have gone long ago, but still they are coming, and gold production has been going up. It is more the technology and the level of investment that will even redefine your resource and reserves. So I think that's important. And again, other minerals have not been explored. I have indicated that. So opportunities are there. Even though generally because of the monomineral identity of Ghana, everybody thinks that Ghana has been overexplored and they don't want to come. and other places as well. And of course, the lack of infrastructure or infrastructure per se would also be a limiting factor. In countries where you don't have developed rails, the roads are bad and all that, it does not fully theoretically encourage investment, even though some mining investment could go on regardless of the roads. I mean, if you look at bulk minerals like manganese and bauxite, and if they have to be hauled by road, obviously the cost of doing that business is higher than if we had well-developed rail system where you have bulk haulage. So it also will influence people's decision. And of course, conflicts, corruption, and of course, the thinking that Africa in particular is a high-risk area. I mean, those who measure risk in the world, sometimes they fail to change. I saw a risk map some time ago, and after a while, I was in South Africa. I told the guys who had presented the risk map, I said, what is the problem with Ghana? People come here, Ghana, you can set up a business a day. You don't have to register. If you have a kinky table and you put it there behind your house, you have a business. And so what is the risk here that you are not changing the risk profile, you're not changing the risk map? But that becomes so ingrained, but in Africa. But of course, it is also risky. I'm sure you heard about what happened in Mali, where you have all this internecine strife going on, and then Burkina Faso, where miners were attacked and all that. So sometimes it is true that there are some risks that we need to know about that. And of course, in 2010 upwards, there was a dip. There was a reduction in the price of commodities. And when commodity prices are going down, they don't encourage people to invest. When the space to space, when it used to be there, if space to space was not giving you much money, would you won't put your money there. So that's some of the things. And then taxes. Taxes are very important. They add to the cost. Of course, what you see here, I just tried to come up with some of the Africa and non-African tax regimes, and the colors will show. You can see that we are placed quite well in Ghana. Look at Ghana. But Ghana, we are among the countries with the highest mining tax. So if you look at the physicals on mining, Ghana will be in the 40% as Quebec of Canada. Now, of course, in Quebec, you would have all the benefits of a developed region as compared to Ghana, and then the level of tax. So people compare these and take decisions. The way it influences them depends. I think they don't just take one thing and say, because of this, I'm not going. It's just an agglomeration of these factors that may influence them. Now, just a quick one. I spoke to you about risk. There has been risk everywhere. In fact, Boris Yeltsin, formerly, the late president of China, once said that if you don't take risk, you will not drink champagne. So our lives are full of risks, but you always want to minimize risk. In fact, I'm sure you know Ernst & Young. They've been doing annual business risk ranking for mining industry for a long time. And if you look at what they have, let me just see. Now, they have identified a number of risks that really confront the industry. Now, if you look at the ones with, is it orange colors? They are the ones that have repeated many times. And then you can see that in 2019, the issue of social license came top again, even though it has appeared, even where it didn't top, it appears somewhere. So social license is very important. The social license is how communities accept you and how you relate to the communities. There's something we called resource nationalism. In fact, in the last 10 years, it was one of the key concept that came up in the mining industry, resource nationalism. It's not that we are going to nationalize the company, but then you're going to say that this is my own resource. Now give me more. Let me take more. I'll take over. If South Africa was a very clear territory for the resource nationalism exposition. So these are risks that most investors look at. How do they, confront this issue of resource nationalism? And I think these are the key risks. License to operate, resource nationalism, benefit sharing, transparency, correcting past. So these are the reasons. They give reasons why we don't want to either cooperate with you or we will not allow you to work, because they are concerned that mining companies don't share the benefit fairly. They are also concerned that mining companies are not transparent. I am not saying it is what happens. In fact, I did a similar presentation to a group of corporate organizations in South Africa, Anglo-American. And then I asked them, tell me how your communities think about you. Did they think about you as fair people? Did they think about you as transparent? And that sort of thing. Communities don't think that, very few, let me not generalize, that mining companies are doing the right thing for them. Even though legally the mining company may not be required to do some of the things. The issue of economic injustice, that some people take more whilst others take less, is also influencing people's action in terms of generating risk. Again, inadequate information about regulatory and policy implications. We don't have the clear policies that will assist in supporting or challenging these things. Now, I'm not going to go through. These are some of the statements that I have taken from various sources to support the risks that are coming up. Let me just read one from a BMI. BMI is a news magazine. There's improving commodity price, market research company BNI, increased regulatory pressure by African government. There's always increased regulatory pressure and all that. So these are all the connecting factors. These are all the context for those risks. Just want to go quickly. Now, because of those pressures from communities and from the citizens, some governments have had to take certain regulatory decisions. For instance, in Australia in 2012, the government just announced that we want to increase the resource rent tax on iron ore and coal mining. That actually led to the downfall of the prime minister at that time. They lost elections because in Australia, mining is key to the economy. Government take certain decisions to please that situation. If you look at Venezuela, and Venezuela is not a good example, but also they revoked multiple mining licenses. In February 2011, one company called Crystal X, they had their contract cancelled. Again, in South Africa, there was a moratorium on awarding new mine prospecting license. Just that the government said, now for a certain period, don't award any mining license. You can see quite a lot of them. DRC, they decided to just increase the taxes. Even in Ghana in 2012, because I was with the Chamber of Mines, and because I was fighting that, there was an attempt to increase the price. Because Australia had increased their taxes, government quickly wanted to. We had to explain to government that, Mr. Government, you have to be careful because you may not get anything, but you may scare away investors. For instance, at that time, government wanted to introduce windfall profit tax. And I was the leader at that time, so I asked, what is windfall profit tax? When the wind falls, then you take the profit. Is a company so stupid that it will say it has made a windfall profit? No. It will put everything into cost. You need, and then you will not get anything. In any case, when people are reading your cost profile in the country, they will see that you have introduced a tax which you are not getting any benefit from. You get what I mean? People who are coming here will say, that country, they have 10 tax regimes. Other countries have 4. And out of the 10, you don't get anything from 4 of them. Yet it is in your book. So we had to explain, then government understood and had to withdraw that. So these are some of the regulatory decisions that are taken. In Tanzania, only 2 years ago, the government there also took some radical decisions. They banned some companies. They actually increased royalties and then said that government was going to take 50% of all the investment shares in the companies. I mean, if you are going to put monies, there's nothing wrong. If you are going to put monies in the 50%, there's nothing wrong. But if you're going to say that we have taken 50% shares without many contribution, you have to question whether that will not affect your attractiveness. Now, finally, I'm now getting to the final side of the presentation. I think that now I'm talking to mining companies here, or the industry. I think industry must be willing to work with government to come up with good policies. Industry should not leave policy making, and that's my key point, policy making to government alone. And let me give you the reasons. One, statistically, you have many countries now becoming more dependent on mining. In fact, if you look at the last, between 1996 and now, you have about 61 out of 72 countries whose dependence on mining grew. In fact, went up by about 17% on the average. So it means that most countries have become dependent on mining companies in a way. So it means that mining companies must be willing to influence resource decisions. And again, even in the lower income countries, there are greater potential for that to happen. There's also the requirement for diversification by many countries. So this is where I believe that mining companies and in the mining industry must work with government in trying to develop policies. They shouldn't just leave it to government alone. They should partner. They shouldn't take over. They should partner. But I think the key point here is that mining companies and the industry must work hand in hand with government to develop policies. Then the nature of the contribution should be this. One, when a mining company goes to a place, when you're advising them, because you come from Ghana and some company wants you to advise them, first then let them understand the context of the country. What is the nature of the country? What are the laws? How do the people behave, and generally things like that. So you need to do that. Again, new companies must avoid partisan alignment. But having said that, when a new company goes to a place, advise them, just try and be, how do they call it, a guest of the country. Don't go and align yourself because it hurts. If you do that, it doesn't help you. So that's a good point that you always have to raise so that you will not have a problem with any government. Again, you have to invest in transparent relationship. Your relationship with government and with the people must be transparent. Make contributions through multilateral agencies such as the World Bank, development partners, and other institutions of higher credibility. Universities, very important. Credible, identifiable NGOs and industry associations are your partners you need to work well with. So having done that, I think we are cool to see a sustainable exploration in our region. I want to thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.